Hello everyone, welcome back. Guest episode of Tech Break by Friday. Today we have with us Andy Sitison, and we will gonna talk about ethical AI. So now I would like to give the stage to Andy so he can tell us a little bit about himself, and let's dive in.
Yeah, very good. I've spent, you can tell by the gray hair, I've been doing this a while, and I've always been in emerging tech. And so, from the 90s through today, I've always on the edge of what's coming out. About 2016, I took a small sabbatical. I've been doing like this global travel job and doing high tech in like Fortune 100 companies, very large companies. I wanted to do something more with my hands. I wanted to get back to programming, and also I kind of wanted to work on the balance between all that was happening digitally and the humans that we are and how we interacted. So I started looking at the data, I looked at what was happening, and I actually, you had a question that you asked me earlier a little bit about, how did I decide AI? How did I go from interesting to in it? And I actually didn't. I actually looked at algorithmic programming, things like machine learning and things like, the space shuttle people used to do with math, and
Mhm.
AI was just part of that. It was just another kind of algorithm. And as I dove in to start solving problems in the data, AI became relevant to me and kind of taught myself the math and the coding to be able to do that. So that's me, 30 plus years of just kind of getting creative and trying to apply technology to human problems.
I would say that you could describe yourself as someone who is a strategic, creative person. If you would like to maybe give two sentences about that, that would be great.
Strategic creative is someone that loves creativity, is always creating, whether it's guitars behind me here or, coding programs. It's creating, but how do you do that strategically? And people always will put you in the IT bucket, the information technology. I've never been in IT. I've always been a product developer with technology. So that to me is strategic creative. When you're applying that skill set to kind of move the world forward in one way or another. That was
Yeah,
not two sentences, but I tried.
that's something pretty interesting, I would say. It has come to being able to work in multiple domains and in multiple products. And based on that, you apply also your technical skills. It's not only the technical skills, core, I would say. In the recent years, technology and AI has evolved a lot, and we have reached a point where everything is AI right now. How has AI impacted your field of work? And if you can, I would love if you could share an example with us.
Yeah. So AI is a lot of things. It's two small letters that's representing everything right now. And that is
Exactly.
part of the problem. We'll get into that, I'm sure, as we talk, but AI is a lot of things. And right now everyone sees it as one thing. I like to joke that I've been doing this about 10 years. And when I started, no one knew what AI was. So I would have to explain what AI was before I could get into anything. Now I have to explain how what I'm doing is not the AI they know, but this is what I'm doing. So I end up having to explain away what AI is to re-explain it. So it's even worse. Yeah, AI for me, what's valuable, and I don't call myself a pundit, an expert on all that's happening.
Mhm.
I am a practical applier of AI. I'm an expert at that space, so I know some things very deeply, and some things I don't care to. I don't ask me what the best new model is. I don't care. I'm
Mhm.
deploying things to solve problems. So to that point, AI is what it does really well. And there's different deployment. We all know generative AI, this GPT conversation, and where you feed it a little bit of a prompt and it feeds back things, either images or text. I don't, we do some of that, but what I started with, and I want to walk you through, is something called sequential classification. And what that does is takes words and takes a lot of text and relates those words. So imagine you got Jack, an old American story that might translate Jack and Jill ran up the hill, right? And it's an
Mhm.
old story that kids learn. And so you learn Jack and Jill, and you realize, okay, eventually those are humans and there's a relationship. And you sort of learn that Jack's maybe a guy and or a male and Jill's a female, and then you learn king and queen. And so it's semantically relating all these words. And that is what sequential classification does. It learns all the relationships to language. And
Mhm.
then at the end, these big, large language models are called transformers. And why they're called transformers is you can take the top off of these or add, if it's a bunch of layers, just like bricks in a house, you can add
Exactly.
another couple layers of bricks. And what we do is train models to understand finding evidence of attributable text in a story. We collect stories. So, and what we tend to collect is emotive scores or attitudinal scores like joy or things like activity level or anxiety or
Mhm.
sentiment. So those
Mhm.
kinds of things we score on. And so we'll take a story and we'll go look for joy. And so we look for evidence in a section of text, and the scorer will classify this as very low, low, medium, high, very high. So we get this what's called a Likert scale, a 5-point scale, and that classify the AI is good at classifying that evidence in there. And this is what AI is, in general, what AI is good at is finding the signal in the noise, the pattern in the complexity of the data. And so learning how to apply that as a specific tool, more like a scalpel than an axe, you want
Mhm.
to tightly apply it. It's really impactful. Closing with saying, like we do some processing of stories, and let's say we process 500 stories, you can be a brilliant human who knows the space and a good researcher, but you hand them 500 stories, they're not going to remember a lot of the text they read as they go through that. AI can.
Sure.
AI can keep all that memory, can find interrelationships in the data. And that's the kind of thing it's really special at and really helpful to us.
That's true for sure. Also, kind of interesting that we all have this problem. We are reading something and we are saying, where did I actually read this? I know that I read it somewhere, but I don't exactly remember where or what book it was or podcast that I listened to it.
There is this bias that AI is all about numbers, dashboards. Of course, we need to measure what we are doing with AI in order to get a return on investment. But you are doing a different kind of work. You are measuring emotions and what surfaces out of stories.
It was pretty much that. Like I said earlier, I took a sabbatical and it was like looking at,
Mhm.
okay, let's play with data and what can we do? And I had a friend that was kind of building a storytelling business around how do I use stories and
Mhm.
companies together and help
Mhm.
brands and so forth. So we kind of started talking and he had played around with a little bit of scoring. I thought, well, let's step on that gas pedal and do more of
Mhm.
that. And so we started looking around at both these kind of the psychological case log for like 150 years of how do you understand how people think and how they feel. Then we also looked at the technical case log of how do you evaluate long form text. And so those came together. And the thing we do isn't what I would call AI, feature analysis. And what is a feature analysis? Like if you have a cancer, there's certain attributes of the cancer that tell you if it's malignant or not.
Mhm.
And then there's other attributes that they're not as related to the cancerous nature of that tumor. The features that do tell you that it is tumorous and that is your study, you want those to be more important. And so you can feature analysis to getting down from say thousands of features that kind of describe this to the ones that really matter. And so there's
Mhm.
all sorts of techniques and tools we all use to get in there and find the power in the data. And so AI was just a great tool to do that. Like we do use generative AI, and what it's really nice about is finding that signal. Like we'll feed it the stories, and then we'll ask it questions. What are the themes? What are people seeing? What do you see in the? I like to think of it as the sediment in a river. You have these little piles of sand in a river. The same thing's in the data. There's little hidden patterns and relationships, and so we look for those piles of sand in that data set. And once we find them, then we go, hey, researcher, we found the needle in the haystack.
Mhm.
Go figure out what that means. Go do something with that. So it's a tool to find things. So the more we used it, we've incorporated it in maybe, 5 or 6, 7 different ways as part of us rolling out this solution set and application.
From personal experience, you select the features that actually make the most sense. In the example that you mentioned before, you tend to look for the features that actually make sense for the cancer. And compared to the other example about the emotions, you look to different kind of features on that sense. So it's not the same because it's not the same use case. This is the power of AI, figuring out the differences, the needle inside the haystack, exploring data, and actually find correlations. I really admire what you shared with us. You took a sabbatical with your friend and you decided to take the step to examine stories and find where this could be applied.
That's right. Absolutely. That's the fun trip.
Traditional leaders and analysis experts would say what is happening in the data,
Hmm.
and I would most of the times don't ask why.
Hmm.
They're just more interested into the what. What is an example that you have used to find the narrative behind something in the data in order to discover this hidden why that some like pure numbers maybe would have completely missed
I
it?
mean, you literally are describing our value prop, right? This is where we've come. And I will be honest that, we've been doing this for a while. And when we started, we understood it and we could talk about it quite well, but no one ever quite connected at the level we needed it to. Like everybody was super interested and didn't get as many budget checkbooks as we wanted at the time because we couldn't quite describe it. It is you're doing a pretty good job, but it's really a lot about the why. And there's nothing wrong with what people are doing. Like we have matured technologies to figure out activities and so forth. But like if you do a survey, you're asking for an answer to a question you wanted to ask. If you, on the other hand, collect a story, you're asking for the questions you should be asking and you're asking what they need. We kind of dull it down. We open up the question, like let's say it's exercise, and it's like, why do you exercise? Well, you might exercise because you want to compete with your sister, or you might want to feel mentally healthier, or you might want to lose some weight. There's all sorts of reasons that you're motivated to do it. But if we ask you in a way that you start to tell us what you feel about, and we ask that across a community of people, and they all start to tell us these are the things that really matter to us. Well, hey, it's easier to engage that group of people as a product and a brand if you know what matters to them. That's the effort here. It is the why. And a couple examples would be I'm here in the Americas where colonialization of America, and that's become, as a historical thing, a real interesting topic as we start to deal with a lot of some of that history. Some of these states have a really good intention to say, come see the history, but how does it hit you? So we did a study on minority travel, people that of minorities coming into what were called plantations in Virginia, for example, and worked with the tourism groups there to help them understand how does this in a contemporary world, how does this hit all these minorities as they come in to work with history? And how do you retell the story? It wasn't just about understanding how they felt, but like, come help us contemporize and retell this history so that it is better for everyone. So it was a really lovely process. It actually won a lot of awards locally, and a tourism standpoint had a real impact. And that was because we were asking a little bit of why and how. How do we engage you? We've also done work with like middle-aged women. How if you're a group of people trying to sell products into middle-aged women, what really matters to them? Like what makes them tick? And that is a really interesting group. They're in the middle of everything. They're in the middle of the family. They're middle of they have their own jobs. They're helping drive the country. They got their adult parents still alive. It's a really interesting and challenging time. So those were profound and challenging stories. People be talking about, gosh, I had to quit my executive job and take care of my mother who was terminally ill for 6 months, and just take you through that story. Then you take AI and you apply that to a bunch of stories and you start to meld that and start to say, well, what emotionally, what's activity wise, what's happening collectively here, and pull out of that, the essence. And it's so powerful as a set of tools and a set of content. You can come back and say, okay, everybody that wants to work with these people, here's what they really need from you. That's the power of us. And our hardest part is just explain it to everyone.
Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging than you think, I would say.
Sick is actually focusing on emotional depth and context. As you mentioned before as well, in these stories of middle aged women that they are working and they are supporting the whole country. You are looking for the emotional context into their stories. Have you ever had organizations that you have worked with that they were more data driven and metrics driven, and they were not aware of what was happening with their people inside the organization?
It's what's interesting is, and I spent a lot of time in big corporate, so I could talk big corporate culture and all that. I spent a lot of time running businesses, not just writing code. And if you look at the way corporate global corporations are set up, there's usually a middle section that is put through a rigor, a gauntlet, or a structure to, hey, don't think too much, execute,
Mhm.
right? So you move up the chain by executing to bigger and bigger challenges. That's usually a predefined budget, so there's a C's and V's is what we say, chief level,
Mhm.
vice presidents, and all those at the top that even they can be restricted a lot. However, at the very C level, what you'll often find is someone with entirely different perspective who says, we've been doing it like this for 5 years. It's not getting us there anymore. We need that next thing. What is the next thing? So often we have to get to that C level to have someone realize that all they're doing, their millions of dollars spent on marketing and everything else, is still missing the boat on understanding their constituents, their employees, their consumers, whatever. And so we'll often sell at the C level to help them start to drive down those change because otherwise you go to talk to a director of marketing and they're like, I love what you're doing, but my budget's for this and it's not, it's this amount for this and I don't have anything for it looks anything like what you're doing. That is one of the challenges when you're strategically changing the way people do business. You have to get really high up in the business to do it.
I totally get it. And it kind of makes sense because the decisions are coming from the C suite level of management.
And luckily, we have a unique message that does resonate. So we don't struggle with their attention once we get it. It's just,
Mhm.
it's harder to find a C-suite person and get them on a phone than, someone that's in the trenches. And so that's the nature of change. If we want to transform business, we have to play it big ball.
And I like this phrase, like we have to play big ball. I will keep it.
You have talked a lot about how to use AI ethically. A lot of organizations are now saying that AI is ethical because we have completed the checklist, checked all the boxes, that's it. What's your approach on that?
This is such a big topic.
Sure.
And we could talk for a couple hours just on this topic. Again, back to this idea of it's a monolith, two little letters meaning everything. And everybody goes, I don't like, you hear this conversation in the restaurant. I don't know that I like AI. I don't know that it's not AI. What is that they're talking about? Well, they're talking about capitalism. They're talking about governmental structures, politics. Everything's blended. AI is a technology that's being used by all these different famous ones here in America that is always debated is guns. Like guns of technology. Guns I guess
Yeah.
technically you could say they don't kill people, but statistically, you own a gun, you die more apt, right? So there's all this interwoven nuance
Mhm.
associated with AI. This is a time for where we need human agency. We need to
Mhm.
start to think how humans manage this world because this is not just any technology. It's a technology that's going to think faster than we think. It's going to move faster than we can humanly manage it. So we have to have tools that manage the tools. Frankly, we have to have restrictions that humanity sets in our society to stop things from happening right now.
Mhm.
Like everybody's worried about the data centers, and they should be. The thing is, right now, if you ask me to do a quick cut of this, there's the egg, the fried egg, there's the yolk, and then the white. Well,
Mhm.
we all the AI we're doing right now is the white. The yolk's the piece that's actually valuable to anyone. Like there's so much extra AI being shoved
Yeah.
into every application. It's not very valuable. It's not worth the cost at a societal level, but at a capitalism level, as a business level, they're like, we've got to win market share. Let's go shove it
Mhm.
in everything. Like I like to say, I have this app on my phone that checks my, the temperatures between floors. And I used to could just go top floor, bottom floor. Well, now to go to the top floor, I have to go ask AI to get to the top floor. I'm like, I don't need to ask AI to get to the top floor to change my thermostat. Like that's just trash. That's, ultimately flatly honest, that's trash. And that's a big tech with a G. I'll leave it at that. But you guys can figure out which one's doing that to me, who completely indebted to because all my tech is very tied into that. But we're putting too much AI in our world, and we've done that a lot. But the
Mhm,
problem is, like here, I'm in Virginia in the United States and Chesapeake Bay area,
mhm.
and there all the international cables run up right our corridor here, our
Mhm.
highway system. Data, they want to put, I'm gonna make a number up, but it's not off, but like 5 miles of data centers, 5 or 10 square miles of data centers,
Okay.
all over which we don't have the water or the power to do that. And a lot of the rules, the governmental rules here are set up that a company cannot be, it has to be seen as a citizen, just like any other citizen, which is trash
Mhm.
because a company is not a citizen and a data center is not a individual household. So they don't hit the powers right. And so there was all this like make it easy for business rules that went in from the 80s and the 90s and for the last 50, 60 years that are now are haunting states like Virginia because companies are coming and going, well, you can't stop me from taking any of the water I want, and you can't stop me from, like if they would put their own pump in, there's nothing to stop them from pumping all the water out of Virginia to feed a data center. So, and why do I share that with you? That is because that you got to think about the governmental issues. You got to think about the business rules that go with that. You've got to think about the resiliency of the natural resources that are there and the business of that. So human agency really matters. We need to think about. I have an old meme that I wrote that I said we should develop humanity and let it define technology, and instead we develop technology and let it define humanity. We got it backwards, right? We need to start
Yeah.
developing our societies in a way that know how to manage this because it's going to get easier to do everything because the tech's doing it, but we don't want to be below it when it doesn't, right?
Mhm.
We still want to own the reins of the tech wheel car we're in, right? So I think it's really about us starting to say with our processes, our purchases, our perspectives, we need to think about us, we need to connect with us, and we need to take care of us. This plays out right.
I just have a question that sparked my mind right now from what you were mentioning. Do you think that nowadays we don't have so much agency as humans as we used to have in the past? Is it something that people can develop?
But we're at a low of
Mm.
where the technology came in, it created escapism. I'll use that
Mhm.
term. Hopefully that translates.
Yeah.
And there's a term that's called zeitgeist. It's like
Mhm.
the shared culture, right? Like we had a breakdown of our zeitgeist a little bit, changing the way people see religion and all sorts. Our cultures are changing, and we're doing this too much, right? Like we got
Sure.
that thing in front of our face, so we're less connected. And there was a movie in the States called Wally, right? Like Wally was the perfect example of what it feels like we're going towards, right? Cruise ships in the space, right? That's the great news is we are, as humans and this planet, both are resilient. And I was just reading, this is another thing that happened in the States, but in the Civil War, we had a really bad Civil War in the 19th century here where
Mhm.
it literally split the country in
Yeah.
half. And during that time, in the middle of that time, a gentleman in one side came up with this idea of land grants for colleges. And he saw that the country, beyond all the fight and strife that they were dealing with, he's like, we're losing farming. And if this country is going to be great, it needs to have great, strong farming. So what he did was set up colleges in every state to make each one had a college that was a technical college and an agricultural college.
Mhm.
And that happened before the war was over, and colleges started popping up. And now today, almost every state has a college that's one or the top one or two colleges in each state is one of these land grant colleges. And so they changed the future of America in such a brilliant way by this one quick decision in a time where it didn't feel like it should be made. But now America's U.S. has had such a great win against that, and established so much structure that not only does it support Americans or U.S. citizenry, but globally, people come to these colleges every year or every day. So that's a perfect example. I just happened to read that I think is where we are. You can't wait till there's a good time. You don't have to change everything at once, but we need to be critically thinking. We need to use our brains. We need to connect with people. If you're on a screen for 8 hours a day, find an hour or two that you're out on your feet in your neighborhood helping somebody, teach a kid to, play volleyball, whatever it is. Find a way to connect at a human level. And these types of things, frankly, if you put yourself in a place that you see the problem, most of us will solve it anyway. That's our goal. That's, us as humans, we like to make things better. So those are some of the big critical things.
When we are closer to people, we have this initiative to help other people. We
Mm.
like to help people when we are next to them and when we are connected to them.
Do you think there are rules in order to gain more trust and to avoid situations like water and electricity supplies in data centers, like the example that you mentioned in Virginia?
It's hard to tell what is
Mm.
noise and what is real. And I'm of the belief in my gray-haired wisdom at this point that we are all okay. We're going to be fine. I've been told for 30 plus years that, the technology that came out this year is going to take everyone's jobs next year. Never has happened. We still matter. I like to joke, well, are we going to, if AI takes over, are humans going to be livestock or pets, right? Like, and I'm just joking, but we should think about that.
Yeah.
We should consider the gravity of the moment. Virginia is going to be just fine. Virginia is a brilliant state, and it's going to thrive, and it needs to resolve itself. And really, a lot of times things don't get resolved until they're under high pressure. I mean, you think about the world wars we've suffered collectively. A lot of heroes and geniuses were born of those challenging times. And I think this is a challenging time. It's an interesting time for us all to step up and be active, not be too casual about all that's going on. So, but I also have extreme optimism that everything's moving forward. So again, we look at, I'll flip it for a second. Like if you look at people that take care, I do a lot on the shoreline and taking care of the Chesapeake Bay and the fishes and all that stuff. And so you look at some of those groups, they're not funded in a way that they can do all they would like to do. So AI can be a really productive tool to help them increase their output. These technologies have value. And so it's really just about balance and proper management. And husbandry is the old word we used to use for our farms. There should be evaluations of what's worth it for us and what's not worth it. And it should only be a profit motive. And I think that's partly where we're currently in the moment, is that profit driven decision making is 80% of the mind share, and it should have less than 80% of the mind share. And it's not that it's bad. I'm a capitalist. I'm a profit. I like profit. That's nothing wrong with it. It shouldn't have sole rule. And so, a lot of our little issues can be addressed if we just, again, I go back to human agency. Let's make put humans back in charge. The middle humans, the normal, the ones that work for a living.
I agree. And I think there are skills like critical thinking, evaluation that we are gaining from education, from life, from personal experiences. Are these the skills that will help us to frame technology instead of technology framing us? I'm stealing your phrase right now.
Well, you know my answer already on that one, because that is absolutely right down my path. My wife's a teacher. Her family has been professors and teachers for generations, and you know we're challenged because there's a lot to learn. There's a weakness of mind that gotten structurally put into the American government, and that is teach to test, teach them things to memorize.
Mhm.
And reality is, I learn every day. I'm a lifelong learner, and
Mhm.
I'm learning more than I ever have at this age. And so, what is that? That is because I need it. I'm passionate about it. And so, if we need to teach people how to learn, we need to teach people how to be passionate about chasing something fun and adventurous and something they want to do. And guess what? They'll learn on their own. Like, I'm not saying we don't have some rote-based training that we need to give everyone. Again, we're out of balance on that. And so I absolutely believe part of this idea of human agency is reestablishing smart thinking. And if you go back to the 18th century and you look at how much philosophy they understood, how much of the Greeks and the classics they understood, that they were much better read on topics. And I'll take one of them over someone that just finished over here at the high school and got fed, everything they didn't learn because they lost passion. Like by the time you get to a certain age, you're just so burnt out on what's thrown at you, you quit
Mhm.
thinking. And so they have to get to college and out of college to start to start finding love for some of that. Not everyone, but there's a lot of lost brains in that process, and that's unfortunate. So partly probably why we have some of the issues we have, but to your point, critical thinking, absolutely. One of my top things. You have to learn how to critically think, and some people don't learn it, never learn it. It's frustrating and shocking how lack of critical thinking they have. In some ways, in certain cultures, it started at at the age of your youth. Your parents teach you things, and it's old wives' tales, and blah blah blah. And I'm not going to attack anyone's cultures or anything, but you don't learn to critically think. You learn to memorize what your parents told you was true, and then we have to evaluate that. We have to evaluate how we think. And at some level, at least in some category or scope, have to teach people that A plus B equals C and Y. Or if you cut an apple in half, you now have two halves of an apple, not two apples, not two quarters of an apple, whatever it is. And so, yeah, I'm droning on because it's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, but we have to start now. I would give us a bad grade if I was to evaluate it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why there are a lot of people out there, they are talking about this specific topic. We need to think critically. There's a lot of information out there, but we also need agency. We need to take action in order to do and achieve something. We all have biases. We are thinking of these things have always been this way. Will they actually change? My question towards you is, do you think that organizations need to cultivate these sort of skills like critical thinking, evaluation into their employees?
Great, great framing. This is also true. You'll often hear the message, well, you can't limit business. You can't limit, structures and the ability to make profits and all this. Reality is good is profitable. Trust is extremely profitable. And so these
Yeah,
things we're talking about make good business decisions. And it's just lazy thinking if you're not doing it, because if you're making profit on the exploitation of humans, I hope to say almost every way, that is just not the way you have to make profit. You do not, that's not your only option. And so part of this is almost ancillary or orthogonal to profit, and that is, how are you making profit? What is your impact? What is your intent and impact of your business? These are decisions we really need to make. We don't have to plow a field with a horse anymore to make a profit. We don't have to pour molten lead. In most companies, don't have to pour molten metal into crucibles to make a profit. That's the old day. That was the hard stuff. Now it's easy services and digital tech. We can make profit much easier. So make it on the good side of humans instead of on the back of humans. Let me get to a point on that. Trust. You brought up trust. I think trust is the best selling opportunity everyone has. Two things we need to deal with: apathy and trust. And we're going to deal with trust first. Digital twins, a great example. They talk about this
yeah.
idea of digital twin, where it's
Mhm.
genetically a version of me, and I could keep myself from getting hurt by testing it. Well, I can tell you what, if I can stop you from having a digital twin of me, I will do everything possible. Why? I don't trust you to have a copy of me, right? Like, I don't trust any corporation or collection of corporations to have that of me right now. I don't trust you on my phone, but you know everything about me, and you won't and you've legally locked me down in ways that I have no idea. There is no trust, and there shouldn't be. That's it. That's the thing. It's not just a concept of trust. It's legitimate. We don't trust our corporations, and we shouldn't, because no one's really working in our benefit at the moment. If you're not paying for it, you're the product, right? Like, we are the product.
Yeah,
And sometimes, back to the livestock thing, won't go there fully, but it feels like you're in a pen waiting for the market. If you are a company and you want to sell a product and you want to increase your sales by 20%, work on trust, work on knowing why and what people care about, and work on gaining their trust, and you'll 2x your product, because everything that's coming through right now has a restrainer on it that we apply. Trust is something we spend a lot of time on, because when you collect stories from somebody, we want them to be authentic. And we've proven in the math, in the AI and so forth, that trust and authenticity travel together. So if we want people to be authentic, they have to trust us at some level. Back to those old employee surveys where they're like, "Hey, do you like your boss?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's great," because I don't trust you. Don't know who's doing this, right?
Yeah,
Anonymous, I don't know, right?
yeah,
So it it's just we have it everywhere. You and I could come up with 1,000 examples of why we don't trust the system. And so trust, I think, is a really great profit motive. So you want to make money? Start making trust. It would be great for all of us for you to do that as companies, but it also would be good for your pocket, right? So, I think that's really important. And I'll hit apathy quick. It deserves more, but like we were talking about education and we talked about burnout, and it's
mhm,
apathy, and it's also like you were saying, can I make a change? I understand the problem, but can I make a change? And apathy is legitimate too, right? We see everything and we're like, how can we affect any of it? And part of me is going back to schools. I could see like it would be fun to hand somebody just a little clover, a leaf of 3 leaf, 4 leaf clover from the field and say, take care of that. And take care of it for 3 hours, put it in a little bit of water, and like keep it from wilting, and prove to them that they can have an impact on something small if they put some focus on that. And I think that's a silly little example, but we all need to be reminded and put into situations where we can make a change. And that's a lot what you can do locally. You can engage with people, all that about getting on your feet and meeting people and helping people. It reteaches you are impacting the world every
mhm.
day, and so you can be important, and your scale doesn't matter, your activity matters.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. At least in the US, are you still using humans?
Mm.
So the thing is, how do we design something that is human-centered in an organization?
First, we'll provide some inertia, some historical
Mhm,
inertia, and that is that companies have always battled tech versus labor, right? And
mhm.
you would see this, and frankly, as a technology salesperson, I was part of that channel.
Yeah.
And what they would say is, oh, well, the technology is just driving us crazy.
Mhm.
Let's do some more labor. And they'd add people. And then they'd use people for 5 or 6 years. And they're like, oh my God, the people are driving us crazy. Let's get some more technology in here. And so it was always a battle. And it was a grass is greener kind of analogy that applies here. And still in that world, AI is obviously, oh, this tech replaces all those nasty little humans we have to deal with. Let's get rid of them all and deal with tech. Well, that's not going to happen. It's transformative. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. Looking for a profit motive and you look to exploit the resources available to you. And I use the word exploit, hopefully not in a, you know, exploitative way, but just
Yeah.
to say use the resources available to you. You're going to use the tech. And then you're going to go, well,
Mhm.
gosh, there's a lot of humans too. I can use some humans and get even more. So let me get more money and use humans and tech. So I think there's a natural balance that
Mhm.
happens because of the greed motive or the profit motive. That's okay. That's a human trait that actually works in our advantage, right? There's some goodness of all this. At the same time, human center matters. And to the all we've been talking about, putting people back in the mix, it is the hot topic. So if you're looking to sell and you want to establish trust is one of your good ideas. The other is to get humans back in the mix of it. Because look at what's happening outside of business. People go, oh, I want to go on a bike ride. I want to go on a hiking trail. I want to get in a kayak. I want to do, everybody's looking to get away and to connect with people, at a human level. We all are desiring this. We're all feeling the need for it. And so, again, you want to sell a Coke product, or, I shouldn't have mentioned a product, a soda or a shoe or a jogging suit. This is a really good time to think about humans in the mix. At the same time, every good company, we've been asked it about our product. Does it keep people from, attrition, losing my employees? And I'm like, yeah, but what's even more important, it improves the employees that didn't leave. This is an opportunity to listen and to enable your business for that employee that didn't leave, but just not as engaged as they used to be because they don't really connect with you. So it improves the power of everyone that's working inside your company, not just the ones keeping people from leaving. So putting humans in the mix and taking care of humans, it's a better company. Everything runs better if you take care of humans. And usually the failure of taking, yes, humans are expensive. And you can't, and with these tech, we can start to remove the places where humans just become outpriced for what we're trying to do. If you're going to use humans, use them at an equitable way. We're at a place where we don't need child labor. We don't need to make products that require people to be in some version of slavery to make that
Mhm.
happen. And yet, I could make a really good case to say slavery never left. All it did was we offshored it as a global economy. We just moved it to other countries. There's still people that are could be called enslaved by things that we do on a very large level. This isn't a small thing; it's a big thing. And so, and prison systems and everything else. And we're not talking about any of that today. But there's back to human agency and how we manage our society. There's a lot of things we need to look at. There's a lot of considering the human in the mix that we just don't do. We don't do well. And we need all of us doing that little thing, taking care of the clovers all over the place to make a better field of all of it. And so we got to retrain ourselves to care, to have the empathy, to get active, and to be critical thinkers in the process.
Basically, because you mentioned the people might feel disconnected from the leadership inside companies, did you ever have one of these projects that you had to measure based on people's stories, how connected or disconnected are with the organization?
Yeah, I'll give you two quick ones. One was a group of did call centers for healthcare. So they were dealing with
Mhm.
really challenging calls. It was a large group of people that were just empaths.
Mhm.
And they sat there and took calls all the time. Huge, huge value. We did a 2 year study of them. And the second year we came back and we were like, there's a lot of anxiety this time. Like we're seeing like just this increase of anxiety and a couple other emotional scores in the community. And we went back to management and said, I don't know what's going on. I don't think anything's changed. And like their jobs are the same. It's kind of the same people, but we're just seeing this increase. And they were like, oh yeah, we just changed out our executive team. Like we've just restructured our C-level in the
Mhm.
company. And I'm like, well, these people that are for your primary breadwinners of the group are super stressed out about it. Like you need to deal with this. That was an example of that. Another was we were looking at imposter syndrome, which
Mhm.
is an idea of like fake it till you make it. Is a high pressure consulting agency. These smart kids were coming in and out of
Mhm.
college and they were hiring a bunch. They were like, I think we could probably do a better job. And so we just ran some workshops and story collection. And we not only talked to the new hires, we talked to the hiring managers and we talked to the senior execs that had been there 10 or 15 years and collected stories and then had everybody come together for a couple of these. And we were in the meeting and one of the senior execs stood up and read a story and he's like, I was just like you guys. 15 years ago, I was scared to death. I didn't think I deserved to be here. I didn't think I had what it takes. And, he goes through this humbling sharing of who he was when he was them. And of course, everyone there that was there stressed out looking at this guy going, oh God, this guy's scary. Everybody goes, wow, I can be him. We can all be him. That is so powerful when you're looking at new hires. I think about my career and, sometimes that you get kind of put into a place where they're like rough you up a little bit, like prove you what you deserve to be here, make the cut thinking. And it's stressful. And yeah, I made the cut, but I went probably 6, 8 months sweating all that junk. And here on the other side, here's a bunch of employees coming in going, hey, you know what? You can be one of these guys making, driving in the nice car in the name parking spot out front too, because you're just like he was when he came in the door. And think about the productivity of those people coming in not stressed out. We talked about earlier, we didn't get into this, but anxiety and activity level and all these things track negatively correlated. Like if you have high anxiety, well, you don't have a lot of activity level. Like people don't feel productive, they feel stressed, right? And
Mhm.
so think about aligning that on new hires who have to get in, learn, and get ready for their customers and get connected. If you get that out of the way in the first month and they feel this connection all the way through their, manager or two above them, and that they feel like they're in a place they deserve to be and belong, invigorated your business, right? You've increased your profit share, you increased your hourly rate, your share of customer, you're increasing all your metrics are going up because of that little improvement. And so that's why, thinking about your employees, thinking about the human in the mix is frankly, just people are overlooking it in almost every scenario. Most companies are just overlooking the opportunity because of organically where we've ended up at the moment we're in. There's tons of broken examples where people make money think about crypto data mining, crypto
Mhm.
coin data mining. Like, I, yeah, you might make some money, but what's the value to the world in that? And
Sure.
there are some people I do believe in this world that will say, I don't care about the world, I don't care about anybody, I just want money. And hopefully that is a minority, if not a small minority. But I also believe there's a huge portion of people that will look like that or look like something else based on the environment they're put in. And in the current world we're in, we have too few examples of people doing the right thing to, provide that demonstration to change their day, to help people start to get. And so I'm asking everybody to kind of turn the batteries on and, save your clover, get engaged locally and start to make a change. The great thing about making those connections and changes, you're affecting other people, but you're affecting yourself too. You're enabling yourself to go, I can do this. I can do more tomorrow. And so we all get better at it and we all get a little less lazy. And
What do you think is something that will surprise most people about this change that we have at the moment?
yeah, it's a lot like the old term willpower. It's if when you had to feed yourself and your family and you had to grow your own vegetables and cut your own trees down for your own log cabin,
Mhm.
you only had so much time in a week to do anything but that. Then we had the Industrial Revolution, and then we had the 1950s and 60s where we just had more and more free time. And at this point, we have a lot of free time, and yet we manage how we train our kids, we manage sports, we manage how we maintain our cars. We don't manage our free time at all. Well, I collectively, generically, we don't manage our free time as well as we should. That's part of becoming the next version of humans is, this idea of leisure time as something other than couch sitting, computer playing, TV watching, or even hiking. Like, what are you doing with that time? Let's say we change it because tech has changed and now we've set up a society where we work 20 hours a week and the rest of the time is open. It can't be couch time. You know, we have to we have to apply ourselves. We have to think about the structure for leadership. Like just like we have all these great business books on how to be a better employee, to run your own business and become famous, we kind of have to do the same thing for our leader side now because that's what's happening, I believe. And at some point we all go, gosh, I just don't need another hour of Tetris. I think I got to go do something. And
Mhm.
so we're just not good at thinking through that yet. And so
Yeah.
all that idea of building society, building better relationships, we've had overly regulatory governments, we've had underregulated governments. We've lived in all those scenarios. I think it's more simple than that. It's like what's good for us? What's good for the person in front of you? How do we know more people? How do we care about more people? And how do we start to frame our brain every second we're spending thinking about, well, John needed me to go by and help his mother do something instead of whatever else I was going to do with my mind, thinking about some kind of influencer on Instagram. Like it's on us to do this. It's on us to start to change that. It's on our us as adults to start to change the way our kids think about things and our grandkids think about things. So society is not a bad term. There's been the best thing about humans is society. And a lot of these things have kind of tarnish on them right now because so many people have been busy saying, I make more money if you don't care. And so I'm going to make sure you don't care. Well, we need to start caring. So
Yeah.
we gotta quit listening to those that are not necessarily working in our own best interest.
Any of these people are listening right now, what is one shift in their mindset that you would advise them to do?
I mean, it'd be really good if we had a little mental model here, but we talked about a few things: human agency. We've talked about
Yeah.
trust. We've talked about apathy. We've talked about local engagement. I think hopefully, if you've listened to this and made it all the way through, and you're still not throwing things at the TV or the screen now, and think we got something to share, write it down with a pencil, a crayon on a napkin. I don't care. Put some of this down. Put some of these thoughts, and then remind yourself tomorrow. Put it by your coffee table where your phone sits when you go to pick it up. What do these things mean to you? What are you going to do tomorrow? If you're infecting the world, how are you going to infect them, right? Like infect some change and change yourself in the process. So find those little mental triggers for yourself to do a little bit. We're all at the end of the year going into the next year. Do a little bit. Test this. Prove us out. Prove us right or wrong. And hopefully in the process you'll get stuck in it. So, and we'll see more change. I mean, let's also stand up people that matter and have the courage to say no when no needs to be said too. Because I do believe there's some crazy, I'm gonna use the word bad. There's some bad things going on in the world right now. Like people not thinking about other people. And
Yeah.
we need to stand up to that. It's a moment where Abigail Adams was John Adams, a president in the States, or one of the first or second, third president. She said, these are times that geniuses would wish to live. It's in these uncommon times where we make geniuses, where we make heroes. So, be a little bit of a hero if you can.
That's great. I would like to thank you very much for your time. It was a great conversation, and we touched a lot of topics that normally in an AI conversation we don't touch. So it was something completely fascinating. Thank you for your time.
Periscope, I appreciate your time. It's great talking to you, and I apologize. I'm going to take you somewhere. I didn't plan to go here either, but it's been a brilliant conversation. I'm just really passionate about us all keeping the use technology, but also again creating that human agency so we all have a better world to live in.
This was another episode of Tech Break by Friday. You can find us in all podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. Follow and subscribe in order to keep up with tech and AI videos. See you soon.